Hey everyone, my name is Scott Mantz, and I'm very, very, very excited to moderate today's press conference for Good Boy, which is making its debut on Shudder today, November 21st. Everyone who saw Shudder in theaters and turned it into an indie phenomenon this year, literally not just an indie phenomenon, but an indie movie phenomenon, can now see it again on Shudder, and now you can spread the word for people who have not seen Good Boy yet to check it out on Shudder and discover it. What a great, great way to bring the year as we get closer. Right now, I want to tell all the journalists who have joined this conversation, if you have a question, please enter your question in the chat function below. And along with your question, please make sure to say your name and your outlet so I can give you and your outlet the credit you deserve. But for right now, we are joined by not just one, but two panelists here for our Good Boy press conference. Writer, director, producer Ben Leonberg, and look who we have here, the star of the show, Indy the Dog, who is truly being a good boy. Hey, Indy. Good boy. All right, so Ben, first question is, how excited are you that Good Boy is going to sort of expand its reach, get seen by more people, the perfect streaming service on Shudder?
Yeah, I mean, we're delighted. We made this movie, just hoping that people would want to see it. It's, a very unusual production the way we made it. It's entirely focused on a dog who doesn't know he's in a press conference or know he's in a movie. So the interest, in the trailer and the poster was delightful, and it's been awesome just to, get to hear from people who actually see it, and especially when they think about it, through their own dogs. Indy is my own dog, so that's kind of like the perfect thing to, happen at a time like this.
It is truly like one of the great movie stories of 2025. And since the movie debuted and since it had its film festival debut, since it's become a hit at the independent box office, what does it mean to you that people are discovering the film, and what kind of reactions have you been getting that really stuck out to you?
Yeah, like I just said, I think the reactions that are the most meaningful to me are when people relate to the movie through their own pets. Indy, as I said, he's my own dog, but so many times I hear people either, like maybe they start from a place of, I've seen my dog do something like that. I've seen my dog stare into empty corners, or he barks at nothing in the middle of the night. That's certainly kind of like the core to the DNA of why I wanted to make this story. I feel like every dog owner has kind of like worried or wondered about that. But also just I hear from people who say like, my dog was there for me when I was going through a bad time, or, I I remember past dogs I've had, they don't live as long as we do. And I think people, like I said, relate to the movie through their own pets, which is delightful. I see the film, of course, as a haunted house, thrill ride, but it also is a love letter to dogs. So yeah, it's been great.
It really is truly a love letter to dogs. Just that loyalty that dogs have to their parents. I want to say parents. I don't like the word owner, but
Yeah,
parents.
they're families. Yeah, because
Yeah.
they are family. They're animals. They're different than us, but it's their relationship to us is very real. And my co-writer and I would like to say that again, this is a haunted house horror movie, but for Indy, for his character, this is a love story, which is very simple, which is that Indy the dog loves the character Todd, and would do anything to try and protect him. And that's kind of it. And the uncomplicated nature of the affection we feel for our pets and our dogs is a good thing. It just makes us kind of hit the ground running. We understand Indy as a character. We understand his stakes so intuitively. And
How
I,
much how much did Indy love the actor playing Todd?
so the actor playing Todd on set was also me. I wore a lot of different hats while making this movie. So I was both the director and the co-writer. I produced the film with my wife. Indy is my dog. The two of us,
Wow.
Kari and I trained him to be in the film. Also, because Indy is our dog, the best performances we could get on set were if I were to stand in to play Todd, she stood in to play Vera, the sister. My wife
Yep.
also occasionally stood in to play Todd, and if you pay very close attention, you'll notice that Todd's jeans don't always fit so good. So, the advantage of that is that, for the scenes of genuine love and affection between Todd and Indy, which you see a lot at the beginning of the movie in the home movies, those home movies are genuine. Those are, Indy as a puppy. But then also we were able to film things that kind of embrace things Indy already did or was really good at, or little habits and routines we had. There's this reoccurring behavior, I guess you can call it, you see throughout the film for when Todd gets out of bed in the morning, Indy walks in between his legs and Todd scratches his side and plays with him. And if that looks real and that seems like, oh, that dog and that guy really like each other, it's because it is. That's how I get out of bed in the morning. And we orchestrated our lives in a way that we could film the movie around those little habits. We lived in the house you see in the movie while we were making it. But then the actor Shane Jensen comes back in post production, essentially after we've finished the movie. Shane is the one who provides the voice of Todd, and really creates the performance, which is a very hard thing to do, both to pull off from a sound perspective and from a performance, challenge. But Shane and Ariel, who plays Vera, were very much up to the task and kind of complete the illusion of Indy's performance.
Absolutely. So, speaking of working with Indy, our first question from our journalist joining us at the press conference today comes from Jana on camera from Gazetta News. So, Jana's question is, I would like to know what was the biggest challenge to work with a doggy actor?
Easily the hardest thing about working with Indy would have been one of the easiest things if I'd been working with a human, and that's simply sitting still. Dramatic close-ups were very, very hard. Moments where we're just seeing Indy's eyes, or especially at the end of the film, there's these kind of paired scenes where we finally see the actor's face, my face, but covered in mud. And there's a moment between the two of them of, I guess, saying goodbye, where I just needed Indy to stay still for a dramatic, telephoto close-up with a shallow depth of field. Where the cinematography was doing a lot of the emotional legwork, and that took 3 days to capture. We
Wow.
started on a Monday, and Indy can only work a few hours a day, so keep in mind that it wasn't 12 days it was not 36 hours of shooting to get that, but it was on a Monday we tried, on a Tuesday we tried again, and by Wednesday we finally got the 5 seconds of footage you see in the film. But as you can see right here, getting him to hold still for a whole 5 or 8 seconds is a little bit tricky. He's curious, and that curiosity is kind of key to his performance, that we were able to engage that in a way that is, I don't want to say genuine, but feels real. That motivates so much of his performance. But yeah, holding still, very, very hard.
Oh, absolutely. So Megan from the Contending has two questions. I'm going to ask her second question first because it's a good one, and it's actually a really good idea. So Megan from the Contending is asking Ken, have you ever thought about doing a documentary about the making of Good Boy?
I mean, the answer is yes, although the challenge is that we filmed for over 400 days, keeping in mind that those days were very short.
Yeah.
It was just for, I think, all but 5 of those days, it was just me, my wife, and Indy on set, kind of figuring out how to do this as a family project. The challenge is that we don't have a lot of behind the scenes because there was literally no other person to film it. We have lots of photos and videos we took on our like iPhones, essentially, of just like cute little moments with Indy. If you saw the film in theaters, there was a little featurette we made that played after the credits. So we kind of have a small little documentary explaining the making of, where we explain how like the Kuleshov effect works, like to create Indy's performance, and then like some of the funny challenges and outtakes of you'll have to take my word if you've not seen this, but making a horror movie is always never as scary as the end product, but making a horror movie with a dog is especially profoundly unscary and very surreal and hilarious. Every take you see in the movie, which, hopefully feels like it adds up to, a fair amount of dread and suspense and horror, the reality of which there's probably dozens of alternate takes where Indy does something so completely wrong or something so completely dog, it just doesn't work. So there's this whole other cut of the film I could make that just becomes an incredibly surreal comedy, if we included all the production audio and the other takes of the film. So it's a great idea.
You know what, Ben? It sounds like you got a great blooper reel in the making there.
Yes, so that maybe that's the way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So Yuki Saruwatari asking, okay, obvious question, but a good one. Where did you get the inspiration for the concept and the story? And when you came up with the idea, how old was our star Indy?
So when I came up with the concept for the idea, I'm not sure Indy's grandparents even existed. So I came up with the idea. I journal and diary just ideas as they come, as I think a lot of story, filmmakers, writers do. And I can trace the origin of the concept back to 2012 when I was rewatching Poltergeist with my friends for probably the millionth time. If you remember, that film begins with the family's golden retriever wandering through the house in Poltergeist, aware of the haunting for the humans have caught on.
Yeah.
And I thought somebody should tell that story, but from the dog's point of view, where the dog who knows better is kind of a trope in horror movies, whether it's a haunted house or there's a dog who's barking at the neighbor who's always out late digging in the backyard, or the dog who won't go into the basement of the house that was just too good of a deal. No one had ever done a story entirely about that animal, that character, and I kind of wanted to pair that with the Jack London Call of the Wild White Fang style of canine protagonist, where they were realistic, they couldn't speak, they couldn't play basketball. The story would have to unfold purely through action and perspective,
Mm.
um, which is a challenge. It took years to kind of even crack that. How do you tell that story without being able to use dialogue or exposition in a conventional way? I worked with my co-writer Alex Cannon, and as we were writing the film, I got Indy as a puppy, not thinking he would ever be a movie star or that he would be involved in the film, just to be my friend and my pet.
Yeah.
But because he was around, I thought I should test out some of these ideas I'm working on for this feature film. How can you use shot reverse shot to kind of create tension and work with an actor who doesn't know he's in a movie, which is a real challenge. Just as I said, he doesn't know he's in a movie. He doesn't know he's on a Zoom call. That is both a challenge, but also an opportunity to get something that feels really authentic. I started making short films with Indy. Some of them were, experiments where I recreated scenes from existing movies. I have a bunch of recreations of scenes from The Shining where instead of Danny, finding room 237, it's Indy. I don't know what to do with these things, but they exist.
Yeah.
And then I tested out a scene from the feature film. There's a jump scare that involves the foot of the bed in the feature film. I had done a version of that as kind of a standalone short film, which won a few contests and festivals. Indy was nominated for a few acting awards, so I kind of knew this is my guy. He can do it. But yeah, it was not a quick decision that I just woke up and hopped out of bed one morning and said, "Oh, I think my dog can be a movie star." It was a lot of trial and error and experimentation to figure out how to do this and build a production entirely around him.
I got to tell you, Ken, if there is any way that the Critics' Choice Association, I'm a member of the Critics' Choice. Our journalists joining us today are members of the Critics' Choice. If there is any way to honor Indy with an honorary award for best performance by an animal in a film, no one is more deserving than Indy.
Well, thank you. I mean, Indy would be honored and delighted to receive any awards for a movie he does not know he was in.
Also, I got to tell you, I know that Poltergeist was a big inspiration. I rewatch that film a couple times a year. It's one of my favorite horror movies ever. I did rewatch it, in October leading up to Halloween because it's a tradition. And ever since you're, hearing how that was a big inspiration for you, that scene in the beginning, when the TV goes to the static, and especially the scene on the bed when the dog jumps on the bed and is looking at the wall, and Joe Beth Williams is looking at the dog and looking at the wall.
Yes.
That's your movie. That's your
Yes.
movie.
Well, and you can see it. You can see it everywhere. The Conjuring has a scene just like that. There's a bunch of things in the Amityville Horror. The dog in the horror movie is a trope that is really ubiquitous, and I think it kind of explains why people gravitated, especially to the trailer, and also explains the concern. There was a lot of does the dog die? That website got a huge boost in traffic. That was a big talking point when the trailer and the poster came out. And I think it's because dogs in horror movies, they're usually ignored. Like the families don't heed the warning that the dog is trying to, express. But then also a lot of those dogs don't make it out of Act One.
Yeah.
And this is
Oh,
obviously a very different story, but horror movies have trained us on this trope so thoroughly. I don't see that as a disadvantage. I think that's an asset in a project like this, that there's kind of this tradition we're building off of.
speaking of building, Thomas Manning from North Carolina has a great question. Question is, I'd love to hear about building up to the reveal of the first time we actually see the actor's face. How difficult was it to pinpoint exactly the moment within the film to finally show a human face?
Oh, that's a great question. We knew we wanted to wield that really deliberately. Filming the movie with Indy as the point of view character, there was kind of a creative and practical consideration that the film all be at his level. And I don't know if he's smaller or larger than you thought based on seeing him on the big screen, but he's only 19 inches tall. And that means that the camera, just by virtue of that height, will kind of crop human bodies from the waist down for the most part. And then we really embrace that, both creatively and practically, to make him the point of view character. But then also, it allowed me to stand in and act, air quotes, with him while also directing him in the scene, to get the best performance out of Indy, and then add Shane's performance, on top of that. But we knew we wanted to reveal the actor at some point, and we wanted to be meaningful and feel really escalatory. So we wanted to land that essentially at the exact moment where it is the dark night of the soul. It is the final dark and stormy night. Indy has battled, the forces out in the rain while he is physically separated from Todd, and is going to, the last thing we see from Indy is going to kind of try and battle his way back into the house to get to this person he's trying to protect, to then suddenly cut to a very short sequence where we have a new point of view character we've never seen, Todd. And he is now experiencing all the same stuff Indy has experienced over the 60 minutes leading up to this. But then it's all compressed. It's all happening at once. We just kind of wanted to have that feeling of we're on this snowball that is building and building. And at that moment, and then certainly with what comes next, hopefully that it feels like the snowball has like built and built and rolled down a hill and like crashed into a tree. So it was definitely strategically placed at the end of the movie, to make that hopefully land as hard as it could.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. The big reveal, like seeing the shark, finally for the first time in Jaws. It's you want to build up to that. But I just want to say again to all the journalists who are watching, if you have questions, please put them in the chat function below. This conversation is incredible. So if you got great questions, and our questions have been great so far, put them in the chat section below along with your name and your outlet. Like Carissa from TV Fanatic has a really good question. Question is, Ken, how influential were things like Does the Dog Die to bringing a story from the dog's perspective to life, especially knowing how reverently we treat animals in movies.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly knew audiences, or we had an instinct. We hoped and feel very validated that audiences were so invested in Indy's, fate, that that was going to be a really powerful, engine to this movie. As I said before, I think horror films have kind of trained us to be worried about dogs in genre films. And we always knew the ending we were driving towards. But dogs are, in addition to us worrying about them, they're just entirely sympathetic characters in a way that a human actor almost never could be. As I mentioned before, the kind of love story between the man and his dog is just so easy to understand and so easy to relate to. But their faces are just easy to empathize with. I love hearing when people say that Indy is one of the most expressive actors they've seen in a while. He really is not an actor. He's a dog, and we project our emotions onto him. One of the things I explained in the little featurette I made about the Kuleshov effect, about how we kind of created Indy's performance, is that again, dogs, the superpower is that they are so easy to relate to. We like them for the most part, and we project ourselves onto them. The way we created so much of Indy's performance is through the filmmaking. People will ask, how did you get Indy to look scared? And the truth is, we didn't do anything. You're feeling scared because the filmmaking has told you to feel that way, and then projecting that emotion back onto Indy. The reality of how we film so many scenes is that we're engaging Indy's natural curiosity, or he's acting for food like he is right now. And we're just using that kind of blank, intense expression he kind of naturally has that you're seeing right there. If you film a close-up of Indy looking intently past camera and then show a subjective shot of a dark corner and a shadow moving across the wall, and there's scary music and kind of all the lighting and production design that makes us feel like this house is really haunted, the audience feels scared and will project that feeling back onto Indy to kind of complete the illusion of the performance. So yeah, we were certainly aware that audiences would be worried about Indy as a character, but then also hope they would empathize with him, like as hard as they seemingly have.
Yeah, it's really funny how, when we're watching movies, we could watch a movie, a war movie, or the typical action movie, and people just get blown away like there's no tomorrow. But anything bad happens to a dog or a cat, people cry foul, you know?
I found the movie Warhorse. I watched a lot of animal acting movies ahead of time, and I found Warhorse and actually a lot of interviews with Steven Spielberg really illuminating. I don't know if it was Spielberg or someone was talking about Warhorse, that kind of it is the oldest trick in the book in Hollywood of just there's scenes that are again through total trickery, but like there's a scene where Warhorse has to like pull a tank up a hill, and that's not really happening, but the filmmaking makes you thinks it's happening. And for some reason, we can empathize with that horse more than we can if it was a person being forced to do this, just because there's something about, it's like, well, I wouldn't like to pull a tank up a hill. And we just feel that so strongly. And it's just, it's not dumb. It's a great thing, I guess, about like how empathy can be used to help tell a story. But yeah, it's pretty neat.
Wow, it is amazing. And War Horse is a terrific film, underrated Spielberg movie. All right, so Megan McLachlan has another question here from the Contending. So, did Todd do some bad stuff to be dragged into the afterlife like that, or is it Indy's imagination?
Oh, I don't see it as Indy's imagination. That's a great question, and I like that interpretation. One of the things that really cracked the story for us, and I have to credit my co-writer Alex Cannon, is the idea that, someone, even a character alludes to this in the film, is that maybe what we're experiencing throughout the film is not supernatural at all. Maybe what Indy and the audience perceives as supernatural, maybe it's actually very real. His sister, Todd's sister, on a phone call says, have you noticed Indy acting strangely? Because I was reading that, and this is genuinely true, hospitals will sometimes use dogs to detect high blood pressure, cancers, epilepsy, all kinds of things. maybe what's happening is very, very real, and we know that Todd is dealing with kind of the ramifications of some sort of health crisis. And I like that there's an ambiguity there. I never viewed the film as that there's some kind of sin that Todd is, like paying for, which is another trope in horror movies. But I liked the ambiguity that maybe what we're seeing is supernatural, or maybe it's very real, and we as filmmakers are taking artistic license because, from a dog's point of view, what's the difference between a malevolent, necrotic, invisible force like a ghost, or a grim reaper, or something like cancer? We don't really know what that sense of smell and like that experience would be like. So we wanted to embrace him as a point of view character, and that idea, kind of that occurs right in the middle of the movie, was a wrinkle I always really, really loved.
Well, dogs especially can sense when people are sad or
100%.
something going on. And with Todd, my interpretation, you know, when he says, "You're a good boy, but you can't save me," was I took it kind of literally that he was just terminally ill.
Yeah, and it kind of comes back to that line, the love story that I think is in some ways the heart of the film, is that Indy would do anything for Todd. You hear stories about this that appear to be true of, like, 5-pound dogs that will like face down grizzly bears, like, that are put themselves in between their family and the unstoppable forces. And that's essentially what the film is that Indy is a good dog, but he can't stop what's coming.
Yeah.
And Todd doesn't want Indy to, you know, die for him.
Right.
And the end of the film, the last beat of the film is actually Indy then choosing to, go on and live a new life with Todd's sister Vera. So yeah, that was absolutely part of the film.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to go back to Megan McLachlan's question that I was going to get back to before, since we're coming to the end of this press conference. Was it important to you to have that epilogue at the end to show how you filmed it?
That opportunity came up kind of at not the final hour, but like towards the moment we knew the film would be released wide, the opportunity we could put something there, was a little bit at the kind of the end of the road. I'm so glad we got to, because people have been so curious about how we got Indy to perform. I've loved that people. It's interesting. I love doing it because I like being able to show how I worked on this thing for 3 years as this odd little family project, and then also get to recognize, everyone who especially helped out in post production to kind of complete the trick. So no, it was not something I originally thought I was going to get to do, but I'm thrilled to have been able to, share that with people, and that's something that we're going to be able to, do more with, and the DVD and Blu-ray extras. So I love that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. The Blu-ray and DVD extras are like a godsend for, like, cinephiles. You know,
It's how I learned how to make movies.
yeah, yeah. The commentary on some of these movies, like I remember one that really stuck out was the commentary track with David Fincher, Brad Pitt, and Edward Norton on Fight Club.
I know exactly the one you're talking about. Yep.
Excellent. And also, if you've never listened to Roger Ebert's commentary track on Citizen Kane, it will blow your mind. It was
That's
incredible.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out. It's funny you mentioned commentary tracks. Just as a small anecdote, I mentioned I watch a lot of dog. I watched a lot of dog acting and films that featured dogs, not even as the star, but like performances I thought from animals that were really good. On the commentary track for The Thing, John Carpenter's Arctic, yes, you know the film. But there's a really good dog actor in that. The dog actor's name is Jed. He's in The Thing, and I think that's his best performance. But he was also in the Ethan Hawke White Fang Disney films.
Oh, wow.
Um, so a very good dog actor. I think, until Indy, my favorite dog actor. But on the director's commentary, Carpenter talks about how, because that dog was in reality, a wolf dog hybrid. I can't exactly remember the breed, he didn't pant much, and he had this very intense stare that Carpenter, who loves point of view and the use of subjective and objective shots to kind of tell stories and create tension, he was able to use that to create this dog performance, which is really nuanced and complex. If you remember, that dog is he's not a dog. He's actually the thing, and he's casing the joint, and there's like subterfuge in animal performance, and it's created all just through the fact that the dog didn't pant. That was really helpful in making Good Boy. One of the things we did to kind of recreate that is just I spent a lot of time carrying air conditioners from room to room to keep the rooms cold so Indy wouldn't pant, and his you'd get that really thoughtful, steely gaze, which he can produce. It's not so steely right now, but
Yes.
it's that if he starts panting, it totally changes the nature of the performance. All that kind of like the gears turning behind the eyes effect will evaporate. So director's commentary tracks, I got to give them a ton of credit.
Well, first of all, bringing up the thing is a great point because I agree with you. The dog in that was so effective with that stare. Really, really incredible. Definitely a standout, but also, when all hell breaks loose in the cage and that
Oh my
dog
gosh.
reveals itself, it is so upsetting to me. I actually had to skip past the scene when I watched The Thing, which is one of my favorite horror movies, because it's so upsetting to me to see the other dogs suffer the way they do. You know what I mean? But that's the power of how much love we have for these dogs.
Yeah, I mean, there's shots in that movie that, having spent a ton of time working with Indy in particular, and there is another dog in the film. There's another golden retriever who's the kind of the ghost haunting the house. I feel like I know a fair amount about directing dogs, or at least a few dogs. There are still shots in that I just don't know how they did. When Jed, the thing dog, enters the pen and he lays down in this way that is just very eerie. It's just like the dog sits and lays down in an unnatural way. And then
Yeah,
all the other dogs react to him like, I don't like you, I'm barking at you.
right
I just don't know
through
how
it.
they did that. Like I
Yeah.
can imagine a way with plating and kind of combining shots together in using modern filmmaking techniques, but that is not what they did then. It's a marvel.
All right. So last question is not really a question. It's a comment. This is from Paul Hall from Common Guys Film Reviews, who says, I felt it was only fitting to do this Zoom call with Ava by my side, although she is sleeping on the job. Thanks for terrifying me on the night I saw this film. Ava woke up barking at around 3:30 a.m. the next morning after the movie. Thanks for the scares and the fun. And to Ben and to Indy and to Carrie, thank you so much for making truly one of the best movies, one of the most innovative and effective horror movies in many, many, many years. Big thanks to Ben Leonberg. Big thanks to Indy the Dog. Big thanks to IFC Films and IFC Entertainment for conducting this press conference. Ben, until we meet again, so great talking with you. And thank you for a great film, a great conversation. Once again, Good Boy is streaming now on Shudder. To all the journalists watching, to everyone watching, make sure you spread the word, go on social media, tell people to watch Good Boy on Shudder. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Scott.